Hello everyone, my name is Layren McDannold and this is my artistic expression assignment number 1, comparing ancient and contemporary media. So first, the pieces I chose are shown here. On the left, we can see that I did the processional frieze from the east side of the terrace of the Apadana in Persepolis in 521 to 465 BCE. And then on the right, I chose a photograph of the United States President, Joe Biden, and the Prime Ministers of Australia, India, and Japan at the Quad Leaders Summit on September 24th, 2021. So first, just a little refresher on how we compare media. So number 1, what are we looking at? Number 2, how was it made? Number 3, when and where was it made? And 4, why was it made? So to start, what are we looking at? So when comparing the pieces in terms of what we're looking at, we can see that both works have men from different geographical locations and cultures. So we can see in the processional frieze that all of these men are in different traditional garb and clothing, which we can see with the different skirts and headwear. And they're also holding different votive offerings from their culture. So you can see what they're bringing with them is also different and influenced by where they come from. As for the photograph, we can see that these are 4 men from different cultures and different geographic locations, and we do have 1 man in a traditional outfit. The men are also balanced in both pieces. So in the frieze, all of the men are connected in the same height, which to me seems very balanced and equal, while in the photo, the men are in order of height in a way that's very aesthetically pleasing and helps to balance the photo as it is a landscape portrait. And then in the frieze, the men are in composite view, meaning that their feet are facing one direction while their body and face are more frontal. And although the photo is not quite dramatic, we can see that both men on the right have their bodies and feet turned more inwards, which we can see by the way their legs are pointing, but then their chest and face are more frontal. And then by seeing the detail above and below the men in the frieze, helps us to see a more elegant, powerful view because it looks very professional and it helps us to see how the Apadana and Persepolis as a whole was a very powerful place. This is similar to us being able to see the Washington Monument in the background of the photo because it shows us that the photo is in Washington, D.C., more specifically at the White House, which is a very powerful and elegant place of government, very similar to Persepolis. Next, how was it made? So we can see that the professional frieze is a piece that is a high relief carving on limestone. It was carved into the side of the staircase of the Apadana at Persepolis. It is the natural color of the stone, and the men are balanced. They're an equal distance apart and the same height. As for the photograph, it is a colored photograph. It is in landscape view, allowing for a fuller view of all of the men and giving it that more balanced look, as well as a view of the columns on each side, which, like I said, is very important in showing the elegance and power of both of these pieces, being able to see the columns and the detail above and below the men. And they are both in landscape view, giving us that full image. And then it allows us to see both the men and the main subject matter while also showing us the background in the photograph. So next, when and where was it made? So we can see for the frieze was 521 to 465 BCE in Persepolis, Persia, which is now modern day Iran. While the photograph was September 24th, 2021 at the White House in Washington, D.C. So this is really important because the frieze was created during a transition in government from a monarchy to a more centralized bureaucratic nation state. The Persian Empire was and is the biggest known empire, controlling 24 different nations. So this meant that the government had to use unity as the biggest political message, especially since there were so many different languages, traditions, cultures, and therefore different ideas and perspectives about what leadership should look like. So by wearing different traditional clothing and bringing cultural gifts, we see a very diverse empire coming together and supporting the same leader and collective government. It was also placed at Persepolis specifically because it was a place of honor and power for the empire and was a place for all of the members of society to come together. As for the photo, we can see that this piece was created to showcase international diplomacy, a huge part of the modern political sphere as relations have continued to grow between nations. In particular, it shows the Quad Leaders Summit between the US President and the Prime Ministers of Australia, India, and Japan at this meeting that's focused on ambitious initiatives that deepen our ties and advance practical cooperation in the 21st century challenges. Things like ending the COVID-19 pandemic, including by increasing production and access to safe and effective vaccines. It promotes high standards of infrastructure and combating the climate crisis, partnering on emerging technology, space, and cybersecurity, and overall just cultivating a next generation talent in all of our countries. So this comparison shows how important unity and the bringing together of diverse communities was and still is in the political realm, because a government system without unity does not work for the people. They both also exemplify how a piece of art or a photograph are used to transcend language and writing, because even without words, we can see that unity within government is being shown to us. And that's kind of the main reason why these pieces were made and why they were made where they were. So moving on to why was it made? So the frieze was made in order to create and maintain a unified, diverse empire that came together under one leader. By using this relief, the empire allowed for this message to be conveyed beyond language as something that any person could understand. It is a symbol of the relevance of iconography at the time and how the idea of power and government had transitioned and continued to grow and change. Similarly, the photo was taken also as a symbol of unity. It allowed the members from each of these nations and from other nations to see their leaders coming together in order to create a safer, more advanced world. In a time, especially when we're experiencing new order with things like the COVID-19 pandemic and the climate crisis. By allowing the viewer to see the white columns and the Washington Monument in the background, so these white columns here, and then this monument right back here. We know that this meeting took place at the White House, a space that functions very similarly to what Persepolis was, and that it's a place of power for the government. And just kind of a last slide on why it's important to compare this media and see this shared meaning is that comparing art over time and through different forms is important in not only understanding how art has changed and transformed, but also in learning history and watching ideas and institutions such as government develop over time. Art is such an important part in understanding the evolution of humans, society, industrialization, morality, law, architecture, and so much more. These two pieces allow us to see that the unity of different people has always been an important role of government, and that the government only works when the people come together and rally behind collective goals and ideals. It also gives us a glimpse into the beginnings of international diplomacy and relations and how important it is to come together as a world to solve issues.